All right, so for the Eagles and for the Steelers, Sunday's game of the week, what are the keys to victory for both sides? Chris, I think there is a common theme of this show for both offenses and for both defenses. I really do think it comes down to who wins the battle in the trenches, and that does sound cliche, but I think the strong suit of the Eagles offense is running the football. I think the strong suit of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is running the football. Both teams have a really good defensive front, though. It's a kind of a strength-on-strength battle, and that's going to make it a fun game to watch. I really do think whoever wins that on both sides, they're probably going to win this game.
I think so, too. Also, I want to correct myself. I said that the Eagles have the number one run defense. They have the number one total yards defense.
Total yards, yep.
Right. That was my mistake there. But I think one element that's going to be really crucial here, if you look back at how the Steelers attacked the Bengals defense, not good. It's like the worst defense in the NFL. But the Bengals defense tried to overcommit to two factors. They wanted to stuff the run, and they wanted to take away the deep ball. You saw early in the half, and I wrote about this in the post because that last week, they deployed like 3/4 of their defense was basically two high safeties, but the linebackers and the defensive line, their first steps was crush the run. So they were going to say, hey, Russell Wilson, we know you like the deep ball. Hey, Steelers, we know you like Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. So we're going to take away both, and you're going to have to beat us by working the short passing game.
Intermediate, yeah.
And then that's what Russell Wilson did. He was like, all right, here. And eventually the Bengals like, oh, man, all right, we got to go to one high safety. And then all of a sudden, bang, deep down the field, big plays, and then it opens up the Steelers' offense a bit more. That's where the Eagles' defense is going to have to win. If they can take away the run without overcommitting a second safety down low, that's going to be big. But then here's the thing is that if they're not overcommitting to the run, when Russell Wilson tries to get some of those plays, and they'll use misdirection, they'll use play action, they'll use bootlegs, they'll use different things to try to catch you running in the wrong direction. If they allow space for guys like Najee Harris, guys like Jaylen Warren, number 2 tight end Darnell Washington. If they allow those guys to get space and they start catching the ball and they start getting downfield, that's how the Steelers offense can start to pace itself and then dink and dunk you and make it a death by 1,000 cuts. And that's where I think the Steelers like to live sometimes. And then, if the Steelers can get that balance, to me, it's not just running the ball. It's doing those little things on offense that kind of make you think a little much, and then they run the ball. Because now, as a linebacker, Nakobe Dean is his first step to the line of scrimmage now, or is his first step lateral to be kind of like, okay, who's coming this way? I mean, am I going to have to cover somebody on this one? That's what the Steelers offense has to do. They have to take the aggression out of this Eagles defense. And this is a very athletic defense. I feel like it's the Georgia defense. You got Nakobe Dean. You got
mostly is personnel wise.
Right? It's crazy. And what's funny is you're going against the Georgia offense. Well, the great Pickens ain't there, but Darnell Washington, Broderick Jones. There's going to be a lot of guys that know each other in this game.
True.
But and hey, maybe that's just Andy Weidel. There's the Andy Weidel Bowl going on right now. But I think that's the key here is outside of the trenches, it's who can get something else going to help them in the trenches battle, because both sides are going to have their wins and losses in the trenches, I think, on Sunday.
Yeah, it's strength on strength. I don't think anyone's going to completely overly dominate that matchup.
Exactly. So if those are going back and forth and no one's dominating it there, who can win the other things that gives you an edge that battle? I think that's going to be the biggest key in this game.
And I think of the same thing for the Eagles, but at the same time, and there is an added emphasis on doing the other things right because of what's going on this week with the passing drama.
Right.
But at the same time, I will say, even with a strength-on-strength matchup, even with having to do those things right, don't completely abandon your identity that has allowed you to win 9 straight games. You know what I mean? There's a balancing act there that you really have to have. You might want to be a certain thing, but you also have to embrace who you are right now. And it's done pretty well for you. You're 11-2 for that reason. So I think there is, as I mentioned earlier, an identity crisis right now with Philadelphia, and I think they need to lean into what they do right. But you're totally right. Both sides are going to know what these teams do well, and you got to keep them honest at least, right? You don't want to be one-dimensional ever in the NFL, especially with the playoffs getting going. These teams want to prove to themselves that they can be a complete football team, so if they have to play the Detroit Lions in the playoffs or for you guys, the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs, that, hey, like, you're going to have to deal with everything we've got, not just one thing.
That's what the great teams do. Good teams can get to what they do well and do it well consistently and do it well often. But the great teams do that, but then also have counter punches.
Yeah,
to
not
say,
just a fastball, right?
Exactly. Like, hey, you think this is how I'm coming? Guess what? I'm coming. I'm coming. You think my right hand is the most dangerous part, but let me hit you with this left, and then all of a sudden you're not guarding for because that's not what we've shown.
Well, because Chris, like the Steelers have made the playoffs for years off of just having a fastball, but now it does feel like they have a counter. Like a fastball can get you a wild card berth. The 2021 Eagles were one of the best rushing attacks I've ever seen, but they couldn't throw the ball. So you got to have those counters if you want to go from good to great.
Absolutely. I think that's a big factor here as well. I wonder how, the secondary has been great for the Eagles. How have you liked their kind of intermediate covers? Like, we know about Quinyon Mitchell, we know about Cooper DeJean, we know about Darius Slay. Like, those guys are talented. But how have you felt about the guys in between, the linebackers and the safeties that have to cover the tight ends, the slot guys? Because I think them, and again, the running backs, they love to throw to Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. How have they done in coverage this year?
It's going to be a tough matchup for Pittsburgh because normally Philadelphia, their weak point on defense and just roster in general when it comes to how much resources Howie Roseman allocates to certain spots, safety and linebacker, they normally draw the short end of the stick. But Zach Bond at linebacker this year, I think he's a defensive player of the year candidate. He has the highest coverage grade of any linebacker right now in football. And then at safety, like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he's getting going, had another interception last week against Carolina. He's got 3 on the year. But Reed Blankenship's coming back from a concussion, so we'll see how he's looking. I do think that still is, again, the strength of this football team is the defensive line, and surprisingly, they're cornerbacks for the first time in a long time. But they have a really good linebacker tandem with Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean and an underrated safety tandem. So the thing is, there really isn't, like last year, there isn't a personnel weak point you can say on this Eagles roster, like, hey, this is what you can exploit. I do think they've done a really good job of not just taking the short, the cheap way out and, doing Band-Aid signings on defense anymore. So linebacker actually this year is a strength, Chris.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. I look at the names there, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean. I like the athleticism there, and so it's going to be about assignment football. Can you stick to your guys? Can you run with guys? Zach Bond. Who do the Steelers go after in this game? Like last week, they were able to catch Devin Bush, a former Steeler, playing linebacker for the Browns. They caught him in mismatches where it's like,
I'd still say it's probably Nakobe. I would probably say Nakobe is the guy to, if you're going to target someone, he would probably be the liability in coverage, if comparatively speaking.
And so, like, can they get the ball in in that direction more often than not? Because again, the Steelers know this secondary. They've played not Quinyon and Cooper, obviously they're rookies, but they've played Darius Slay before. They know what that's like. So to me, that's going to be a big factor here is getting those guys in situations that favor the Steelers. Because again, George Pickens isn't the guy now. So now you're not looking for Pickens on Slay or Pickens on Mitchell. You're looking for in the intermediate where you get there, and then when you get those one-on-ones, how do you capitalize on them in the right spaces?